Today I'm going to share with you 3 unnerving experiences while out camping and hunting. But before we get into those stories, welcome back to Dark Wilderness, where I share encounters with the unexplained. If you've had an encounter that you would like to share, please email it to me at the link below. And if you like today's story, please gently slap that like button, as I'll be uploading multiple times every week. So don't forget to hoist that subscribe button into the air so you don't miss out on any future content. Now, let's get into today's encounter. This story comes from Jack, and it happened 2 years ago while he was out deer hunting in the Sandilands Provincial Forest in Southeastern Manitoba. Jack's the same fellow that sent in that encounter about that unexplained scream that happened to him and 2 of his friends while deer hunting in that same spot. Jack runs a ton of tree stands in this location, and he also runs trail cameras pretty much all year round. So on the morning of this experience, he woke up, got all of his gear into his truck, then he checked the weather, and that morning the wind was perfect for this one particular tree stand. So he decided that's where he was going to go. So he got in his truck and drove out to the Sandilands. Then he was going down this long gravel road. He went down it for quite a few miles, and then he turned onto this little quad trail. And as soon as he turned onto that quad trail, he pulled his truck over to the side, turned it off, got out, grabbed his gear. Then he started walking down this trail. He walked for quite a while, and the trail actually dips down and goes into this old dry creek bed. From there, he turned and started heading north along this creek bed. He had to walk about 400 meters, and that creek bed turns and heads west into this big marsh lake. Right where it turns, though, on the east side of the creek bed, there's a bit of a hill that goes up, and that's where his tree stand was, the tree stand that he was going to hunt that day. So when he got to where the creek bed turned, he turned, went up the hill, climbed up into his tree stand, and he just settled in for the morning's hunt. Almost immediately, once he was in the stand, he realized that the area was super quiet. He did not hear any birds. He didn't hear anything running through the leaves. It was just super quiet. He kind of tried to justify that as, he just walked in there. He disturbed the area. He hasn't given it enough time to calm down. If he just sat there just a little longer, the area would come back to life and everything would be fine. So he sat there for a couple more minutes, and all of a sudden he started to get this really uneasy feeling. He had this feeling like he was being watched. Again, he tried to just brush that off and just focus on the hunt ahead of him. As the sun started to come up, he turned his head and he looked towards the east, and he noticed that about 15 yards from his tree stand, there was this tree that was about 3 inches in diameter and about 15 feet tall that was bent over in like a big arch, almost like you would see like a spring trap. And in the middle of this arch tree, there was a big stick leaning right up against the center of the arch. So he's looking at this arch tree, and he just can't figure out why this tree is like this and who did this, because he actually hunted that stand the night before, and that tree was not like that. So for the entire rest of the morning's hunt, he just kept staring over at this tree, just trying to figure out why it was like that. The entire time, though, he could not shake this feeling of being watched. So after about 3 hours being up in the stand and seeing absolutely nothing, which was super odd because he had constant deer activity on these trail cameras for months. And now this morning, he saw nothing. So he decided after 3 hours, Kate, that's it. He's going to climb out of the stand, and he's going to walk just over from the stand to where he has his one trail camera. So he stood up, he turned around, and as soon as he turned around, he noticed that about 10 yards behind the stand, there was another tree, similar diameter, similar height, also bent over into an arch with a stick leaning up against the middle of it. So that put him at even more unease now, because now he sees the tree in front of him like that, and there's the one behind the stand like that. So he decides, Kate, I'm just going to leave this alone. I'm just going to check my trail camera. I'm going to head back to the truck, and I'm going to go hunt a different spot for the afternoon. So he walked over to the tree that his trail camera was on. Now, his trail camera has a little LCD display screen on it, so he could view everything that camera's recorded right on the camera itself. So when he opened up the trail camera, he noticed that the last activity on it was at 2:30 that morning. So he took a look, and there was a picture followed by a 10-second video. So first he brought the picture up, and he noticed that there was nothing on the camera, nothing in front of it, nothing to show what triggered this camera to go off. So he pushed play on the video, and he noticed that after 2 seconds of the camera looking completely forward, which was the same position that this camera had been in for about 4 months, the camera slowly started to angle down towards the ground. It did that for the remaining 8 seconds of the video, and then it just turned off. So Jack instantly thought this was really bizarre, because when he walked up to his camera was nice and flush right up against a tree, just the way he had left it last time he checked it. So his first thought was it was probably a bear. A bear probably was climbing up the tree. That's what triggered the camera to go off. And the reason the camera started to angle down was because a bear's foot had pushed down on it, and that's why it was angled down. So he started to look at the tree just to see if there's any sign of a bear climbing this tree. Because whenever a bear will climb a tree, you'll normally find the bark's all disturbed, or there'll be big gouge marks in the tree itself. And there was nothing on this tree to indicate a bear climbing this tree. At this point, Jack was done. He just wanted to get back to his truck. So he started making his way back down that creek bed. And after going about 50 yards, he came across a third tree, very similar diameter and similar height to the other two, bent the exact same way. So he picked the pace up even more now, and when he broke out of that creek bed, he turned onto the quad trail, went up the hill, and as soon as he got to the top of that hill, that feeling of being watched was gone. He said it was like a big weight had just been lifted from him. When he got home, he called his buddy, and his buddy actually said that the last time he hunted that stand, he had the same feeling of being watched the entire time. So the two guys, they talked about it, and they decided they were going to go back the next morning, and they were just going to pull the camera and pull the tree stand and go set them up somewhere else. So when they went back out there the next morning, they were going down that quad trail, and they came across 6 more trees bent the exact same way. Now, they didn't see anything else or have any other experiences aside from the feeling of being watched, but it does beg a question of who would be messing with 2 hunters in the middle of nowhere. It's not like they were near any populated areas, or even that this area is easy to access. To get to where his tree stand is some pretty serious bushwhacking, and Jack just doesn't think that a person would go through that much trouble just to mess with them in the middle of nowhere, especially at 2:30 in the morning. This story comes from a super good friend of mine, and it happened 6 years ago. Him and his family were going on a family vacation from Winnipeg all the way up to Northwestern Alberta to go visit his wife's parents for a week. He was not overly looking forward to this particular trip, not so much because he was going to visit the in-laws, or outlaws as he calls them, but because his kids were so small and it was such a long drive, he was just not looking forward to being cramped in a vehicle for that long. On the first night at his in-laws' place, though, his father-in-law actually surprised him and his family with the fact that he was gifting them his pretty much brand new travel trailer. So my buddy, as soon as he heard this, his eyes lit up, he got a big smile, and he instantly started thinking about all the fun camping adventures him and his family could have now. So after dinner, his father-in-law took him out to the trailer, kind of just gave him a tour of the trailer. And my buddy was shocked at just the immaculate condition of this thing. There was no scratches, no nothing on it. It was just absolutely mint. So his father-in-law took him through the whole trailer, showing him everything, showing him how to work everything. And when he was leaving the trailer, he looked down and he noticed that there was a bat sitting right by the door. So he grabbed the bat, went to hand it to his father-in-law, and his father-in-law said, "No, keep it there. You'll never know, you might need it if a bear breaks in." So my buddy kind of chuckled, looked at the bat, put it back by the door, and then they went inside and called it a night. So once their visit was over at the end of the week and it was time to go home, him and his wife decided, you know what, instead of making this drive in about a day or a day and a half back to Winnipeg, they decided they were just going to take their time and do some camping along the way, just kind of enjoy the new trailer. So this one night, they're rolling through Saskatchewan, and they're coming up to a town called Morse, Saskatchewan. And at this point, my buddy was super tired, so he found a little RV park. He pulled off into this RV park, and the first thing he noticed was that there was only one other trailer in this entire park. So he was super happy when he saw that, because he was like, perfect, we're going to have this entire park pretty much to ourselves. It's going to be a peaceful night. This is going to be great. So they found a spot. He backed the trailer in. He got out. He started setting up the trailer from the outside. And he noticed that the two people in that other trailer were actually getting into their vehicle. So he went up and talked to them, and it turned out that they were actually going into town for the night to go stay at a friend's place. So now my buddy was like, this just got even better. I have this entire park all to ourselves. This is going to be great. So they had dinner. His wife got the kids off to bed. A little while later, him and his wife went off to bed. And right before he fell asleep, he could hear thunder rolling in the distance and see very faint flashes of lightning. All of a sudden, in the middle of the night, he just woke up. He doesn't know why he woke up. He just woke up almost like a feeling of something was not right. So he's lying in bed and he could hear something moving around the trailer outside on the site. So he's lying in bed just listening to who or whatever this is move around the trailer. So he's lying there, and at one point, all of a sudden, he just hears a voice say, "You're dead." At this point, his wife, who is right beside him in bed, she heard that too. She freaked out, jumped out of bed, ran, got the kids off the other bed, and brought them into bed with them. My buddy told his wife to get her cell phone ready and get ready to call the cops. He got up out of bed, full dad to the rescue attire, white tank top, boxer shorts, flip-flops, and he went for the door of the trailer. Right as he got to the door of the trailer, he remembered about the bat. So he grabbed the bat, whipped open the door of the trailer, and jumped outside. When he jumped outside, there were multiple voices whistling and hollering at him. So he's standing outside his trailer, has his bat up in the air like this, and he just yells to these voices that he's up for an all-night home run hitting contest. At this point, there was a flash of lightning, and now he was able to see exactly who he was up against. And there were multiple teenagers right inside the site with him. And one kid was actually only about 10 yards away from him. So he turned and he just started running towards this kid. This kid instantly turned and just started booking it down the road. Almost instantly, there were these bright headlights from a truck just sitting on the road that came on with a big light bar on the top. My buddy was so enraged at what that kid had said outside the trailer that he was just raring to go at this point. So he started running directly towards this truck, and this truck floored it. It was coming right towards him. He knew he would not win a game of chicken against a truck, so he stepped over to the side, and right as this truck passed him, he just took the bat and swung it right at the driver's side mirror. Ended up blowing the mirror right off. The next morning, he went out and he wanted to go find, as he called it, his spoils of war. So he walked down the road and he actually found the driver's side mirror from that truck lying on the road. He still has that mirror and that bat to this day. Now, this is not really a story of unexplained or cryptids or anything like that, but it does go to show that no matter where you go, whether it's in a tent, a trailer, or anything like that, there's always dangers that you should be alert of. So in this situation, we don't know exactly what these teenagers were up to or their reasons for being in that site. And we don't know if what the one guy said right outside the window of the trailer when he said, "You're dead," if he was just messing around, or if these guys were really up to no good. So that just goes to show that no matter where you go when you're out in the wilderness, just always be cautious and always be aware of your surroundings. There's other dangers out there that are not just animal related or unexplained related. There are people out there that do mean people harm as well. So that is something else that you should always just kind of keep in the back of your mind whenever you go out, and just always be prepared for any type of situation that can arise. This story comes from one of our subscribers. I told him I would not use his name for this, so I'm just going to call him D. D's very into the Sasquatch topic, and he brings it up to people whenever he gets a chance to. A few years ago, he was at a dinner party, and he met this lady named Doris. And it turned out that in 1966, when she was just a teenager, her and 3 of her friends, they went up to the Manitoba Provincial Park here in Manitoba to go on a canoe trip. Where the Manitoba Provincial Park is located, it's northeast of Winnipeg, and it's right on the border of the Northwestern Provincial Park as well. Now, this area is super dense bush, full of lakes, rivers, swamps, and more bugs than you can ever count. So these girls, they got their canoes, they went up to the Manitoba Park, loaded their canoes with the water, and they took off for their canoe trip. The one night they're going down the river, they pull their canoes over to the side, get up on the shore, set up camp, set up their tents, had dinner, and then before going up to bed, they hoisted their backpacks up into a tree just to keep bears away from getting their food. In the middle of the night at some point, Doris was awakened by the feeling of something stepping right on the side of her tent. So her first thought was, this is one of her friends from the other tent up and about moving through the campsite. So she called over to the other girls saying, who's outside? And they replied with that they were still in their tent. So now her heart was beating and she was super nervous, but she thought that it was most likely probably a bear. But still, that really made her nervous because 4 girls out camping and now there's a bear in the campsite. So a couple seconds later, she hears something run from the tent across the site and into the woods. And as it runs into the woods, she hears the loud thud of the 2 backpacks falling from the tree. So the next morning, they wake up, they kind of look around the campsite. They didn't see any sign of a bear, so they went to go get their backpacks. Sure enough, their backpacks were gone. So they start following this trail that this animal made through the bush down this game trail. And they came across their pots, their pans, and their bug spray, but no backpack and no food. So the girls were pretty nervous, so they loaded their stuff up into the canoe, and 2 of the girls went and set up a camp on an island on the river, while the other 2 girls went further downriver to go to town to go get some more supplies and alert the rangers. While they were in town, they came across a ranger. They told the ranger what happened, and the ranger told them it was more than likely just a bear. So these girls took their supplies back to the canoe, went back down the river to the island where their friends were, and they actually finished the rest of their canoe trip without incident. Now, Dee was talking with Doris, and he outright asked her, what she thought this was. And she told him it was a bear. Now, Dee brought up some points to Doris, and I actually picked up on these pretty quickly while I was reading this story about the backpacks. Typically, if a bear is going to pull a bag of food down from a tree, they're just going to rip into it right there. They're not going to drag it off into the bush and discard pots and pans and bug spray. They're going to go right after that food as soon as they can. They might drag it into the bush a little bit, but even then, they're going to rip that bag open. There'll be pieces of backpack around. They're not just going to take out the pots and pans and bug spray, take the pack, and just keep going. So once he said that to her, she said, well, I guess it could have been a person. So Dee said to her, well, if this was a person, how did they find you in the middle of nowhere in the middle of the night? And Doris was not too sure how to answer that. And again, he brought up the fact about the bug spray. Because again, this part of the province is super bad for bugs, especially in the summer. There's billions of mosquitoes and sandflies. Nobody who would be wandering through the bush randomly in the middle of nowhere would discard a bug spray, because that's just an absolute lifesaver in the Manitoba bush in the summer. You need bug spray, so nobody would discard that. And that's what he told to Doris. So Doris looked a little bit confused, and Dee brought up the topic of Sasquatch. He said, do you think this is possible that you had an encounter with a Sasquatch? When he said that to her, she outright denied any possibility that this could have been a Sasquatch. Now, there's no physical proof that this was a Sasquatch. There was no sighting, no prints, no nothing. But the way that those bags were taken did not match the MO of a bear. And typically, if somebody steals something, they take something for value. So why they would discard, if this was a person, those pots and pans and the bug spray, which in that area of the province, especially at night, is worth its weight in gold, just doesn't add up. Dee finds this story incredibly interesting because of the fact that when he brought up the Sasquatch topic to Doris, her demeanor completely changed. It was almost like she kind of had a little bit of a realization, but then completely turned it around and denied any possibility that what they experienced could have been related to Sasquatch and not just a bear and not just some random person in the middle of nowhere taking their packs. Well, that's it for today's stories. Just wanted to do something a little bit different today, so if you guys have any comments on these, please leave it in the comments below. And if you haven't done so already, please hoist that subscribe button up into a tree, and we'll see you next time.